Chapter 22, Baseball and Braiding. Before bed on Sunday night, Janie always took a shower and washed her hair. Lately, she'd been weaving it into 6 braids while it was still damp so that she could have wavy hair in the morning. Janie's hair was usually stick straight, like Dad's and Bat's, though hers was a dark brown instead of black. When she came out of the bathroom, in her pajamas carrying a wide-toothed comb and 6 hair ties, Bat called, "Can I braid it?" "I can do it myself," Janie said. "Let him try," Dad said from the couch where he sat watching baseball on TV. He had an orange and black baseball cap on his head because tonight he was rooting for the Orioles. He had a collection of caps for all the teams he liked, and whenever one of his teams was playing, he'd select the right baseball cap from the top shelf of his closet and wear it for the whole game. Dad said he didn't believe in luck, but it sort of seemed like he did. "Okay," said Janie, "but if you mess up the braids, I'm going to redo them." She sat cross-legged on the floor facing the TV. Bat sat behind her on the couch next to Dad. Janie handed him the comb. Bat started combing at the bottom, the way Janie had taught him so he wouldn't pull her hair. He worked out all the little tangles with the teeth of the comb as he made his way up towards the top of her head. Soon he could pull the comb straight through her hair from the very top of the ends without snagging at all. Then he divided her hair into 6 sections, 2 in the front, 2 in the middle, and 2 in the back. The 2 back sections looked a little thicker than the others, but Bat didn't think Janie would notice. He picked up the front left section of hair and started braiding. "Go, go, go!" Dad yelled at the TV. One of the baseball players had made a good hit and was running as fast as he could around the bases. "I think baseball is the most boring game to watch," Janie said, "even more boring than football." "That's because you won't let me explain it to you," Dad said, adjusting his cap. "If you understood the game, it's fascinating." Bat reached the bottom of the first section of hair and wound a pink elastic band around its end. The braid wasn't perfectly neat and straight like the braids Janie did, but it wasn't bad. Moving on to the other front section, Bat focused on making the second braid even better than the first. "Make sure you're braiding it tight," Janie said, "so it's really wavy." "I am," Bat said. Bat loved braiding Janie's hair, even though he usually wasn't very good at hand things. He liked the feeling of the damp, heavy hair. He liked organizing it into smaller sections, neatly contained braids. He liked feeling close to Janie like this, by helping her and touching her, without having to have a big conversation that might turn into a fight. Getting along with people was hard for Bat. Figuring out what they meant when they said something or when they made certain faces at him. People are complicated, but braiding was easy. There, he'd finished the second braid and wrapped the end of this one with a dark green elastic. Janie reached up and touched the braid, then pulled it to the front of her face so she could see it. "Not bad," she said. "Yes!" yelled Dad. He stood up from the couch, grabbing the cap from his head and waving it around. It wasn't the same as being at home. Mom wasn't here. Thor wasn't here. But maybe every other weekend could be okay. Chapter 23, Windows. Some days Bat was the first person awake. It didn't happen often because Mom was a morning person. Usually when Bat woke up, he went straight into the kitchen to find Mom sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and a book. But every now and then, Bat awoke to the completely quiet house, a sleeping house. Tuesday was one of those mornings. Bat woke up suddenly and completely to a still dark sky outside his window. He blinked and sat up, slipped his feet into his slippers, took the skunk sling from the doorknob where he'd hung it the night before, and went into the living room. The living room windows faced the front yard. Bat could make out the shape of the big oak tree on the lawn. It was a darker shadow against the velvety early morning sky. He went straight to Thor's enclosure and found the kit tucked into his sleeping corner, surrounded by the rice-filled socks that made a nice padded nook. He stroked Thor's back, feeling the rise and fall of his sleeping breaths before gently scooping him up. Thor let out a little high-pitched yawning sound, his tiny paws swimming through the air as Bat settled him into the sling. Once inside, Thor rustled around for a moment before quieting back down. In the kitchen, Bat opened the refrigerator as quietly as he could and retrieved the formula. He filled the syringe and held it under the steam of hot water to warm it up. Thor could smell the formula. Bat could tell because he wriggled around in his pouch. "It's coming, little guy," Bat said. When the formula was warm, he went back into the living room and curled up on the window bench. Already the sky was changing. It was still dark, but now Bat could make out the branches of the tree. He heard the very earliest morning birds, the ones that sang each day as the sky began to lighten. Gently, Bat reached into the pouch and pulled out the skunk kit. It was too dark to see clearly, but Bat didn't want to startle him by turning on the lamp. So he brought the syringe down to Thor's face and let the skunk find the tip by smell. As Thor had his breakfast, the sky turned violet and pink, then orangey red. The tree's trunk lightened from black to brown, and its leaves transformed to green. The first birds called louder, waking up their friends, and they became a chorus of song. Bat looked down to see if Thor had finished his formula and gasped in surprise. The two tight slits that had been closed since Mom first brought him home were open. Bat could see Thor's eyes. They were the darkest black Bat had ever seen. "Hey there," Bat cooed down at Thor. "Good morning, little kit." Thor kept licking at the tip of the syringe, but his quick pink tongue hesitated just a bit when Bat spoke. Maybe he was listening. Maybe he understood. Bat stroked back the soft black and white fuzz on Thor's little forehead. "I see you," he said. "Do you see me?" Mom emerged from her bedroom, tying the belt of her robe. "Bat," she said, "you're up early." "Mom," Bat said, "look, Thor's eyes are open." Mom came over to see. "Look at that," she said, resting her hand on the top of Bat's head and petting his hair just as Bat stroked Thor. "His eyes are beautiful, Mom," Bat said. "Don't you think his eyes are beautiful?" Mom sat down in the window next to Bat. "I think that's the first time I've ever heard you mention someone's eyes," she said. "Most eyes are boring," Bat said, "but Thor's eyes are amazing. Look, they're the color of outer space. They're open." "Bat," Mom said, "what color are my eyes?" "Brown," Bat answered, still staring at the skunk kit. Droplets of formula hung from little black and white hairs all around his mouth. "Nope," said Mom, "they're hazel." This got Bat's attention. "Really?" He looked up and stared at Mom's face. Her eyes were golden brown with little flecks of green and yellow in them. "They look like marbles," Bat said. "I never noticed." "Well, you never have been all that interested in people's eyes." Bat shrugged. "I never thought about it," he said. "Some people say you can tell a lot about a person by looking into their eyes," Mom said. "What do you think about that?" Bat thought about it. "I don't get it," he said. "If I want to know something about a person, I ask. I think you can tell more about people from what they say than from their eyes." Said Mom. "You have an interesting way of seeing the world, Bat." Bat stared deep into Thor's space black eyes. He tried to see what he could learn from them. He looked first into the left eye, and then into the right, and then into the left again. "It's hard to look into two eyes at the same time," he said. "Which one am I supposed to look into?" "I don't think it matters. Try looking into my eyes," Mom said, "and see what you can learn about me." Bat tucked Thor back into the pouch. Mom took the syringe and set it down. She took Bat's hands into hers and smiled. Bat smiled back, and then he tried to see what Mom's eyes could tell him. The left eye had 3 more flecks of green than the right eye. The right eye had 1 more fleck of yellow. The black points in the middle were exactly the same size. Her eyes were shiny. "Hazel is cool," Bat said. "It's like a rainbow of all the boring colors." "Funny, Bat," Mom said. "Do you know what I see when I look into your eyes?" "Brown and black," Bat said, "with white all around." "Yes," said Mom, "I do see that. But I also see your sweetness, your thoughtful nature, and your busy, busy mind." Bat looked away. It was uncomfortable to let anyone look into his eyes for too long. It made him feel kind of itchy and shy. "You can tell all that by looking in my eyes?" "Yes," she said. She leaned forward and kissed Bat's forehead. "I see all of that and more." Chapter 24, A Reply. "Bat," said Mr. Garrison as the students filed into the classroom, You got an email from Dr. Jerry Dragoo. He wrote back, Bat said, his heart beating faster. There were only a few days left until Thor was supposed to go to the rescue center, and he had almost given up hope. What did he say? You can read it at recess, Mr. Garrison said. It's a nice email. I want to read it now. All the other kids were at their desk, but Bat was still standing in the aisle. He felt his hands pull up tight against his sides the way he did when he was excited. At recess, Bat, said Mr. Garrison. Bat hated waiting. He hated waiting. It was so stupid to wait for something if there was no good reason that it couldn't happen right now. Who cared if class started a few minutes late? If it meant that he could read his email. A real-life skunk expert had written to him. That was certainly more important than anything Mr. Garrison had planned right now. He had a real-life skunk expert. Has a real-life skunk expert ever written to Mr. Garrison? Almost certainly not. Mr. Garrison, I think you should let me read my email now, Bat said. Bat, Mr. Garrison answered, sometimes we have to wait. It's good practice to delay gratification. Bat didn't really know what Mr. Garrison meant by that, but he knew it meant that Mr. Garrison wasn't going to let him read the email right now. He wanted to insist, and he would insist if he thought he could change Mr. Garrison's mind. But Mr. Garrison looked serious, so Bat reluctantly went to his seat. Too bad, said Israel, putting down the book he had been reading. Don't make fun of me, Bat yelled. Whoa, dude, Israel said. I wasn't making fun of you. Bat, said Mr. Garrison, coming over to his desk. What on earth is the matter? Israel was making fun of me, Bat said. I was not, said Israel. I just said, too bad. Bat can't read his email right now. You don't think it's too bad, Bat said. He kept his eyes on the surface of his desk, running his gaze over the wood grain. You don't know what I think, Bat, said Israel. You don't know everything. Bat, said Mr. Garrison, putting his hand on Bat's shoulder. The weight of his hand felt good. It helped Bat to feel like he was sitting in his seat, like he wasn't going to fly away. Try to give Israel the benefit of the doubt, okay? If he says he was being sincere, believe him. Bat nodded, but he didn't look up. Israel went back to his book. For what it's worth, Bat, said Mr. Garrison in a quieter voice, I think Israel was being kind. He'd like to be your friend. Then Mr. Garrison took his hand off Bat's shoulder and returned to the front of the room. Now Bat wasn't just thinking about the email from Dr. Jerry Dragoo. He was also thinking about whether Israel wants to be his friend. He thought about how Israel had asked him if he wanted to play Foursquare and how he had said hello outside the sugar shack. Then he thought about the other kids in the class looking at him right now, and he thought about Thor's eyes, and he thought about the windy day outside. It was too much to think about all at once, and his skin began to feel prickly and too tight. But he couldn't take off his skin, so instead he reached into his backpack for his earmuffs and slipped them on. The classroom noise around him faded, and Bat's skin calmed down. Bat looked at the clock around the classroom door. It was 8:55. Recess was at 10:15. That was exactly 1 hour and 20 minutes away. He could wait that long. He didn't like it, but he could do it. Time was a funny thing. Sometimes an hour and 20 minutes didn't feel very long at all. Like when Bat was watching YouTube videos about animals, and sometimes, like when Dad was watching baseball on TV, an hour and 20 minutes felt like 20 years. But that day, the hour and 20 minutes between 8:55 and 10:15 felt like 20 baseball games. At last, Mr. Grayson said, Okay, gang, let's go play. The kids shoved back their chairs and headed for the door. Bat pulled off his earmuffs and went to Mr. Grayson's desk. It's recess, he said. Yes, Bat, it sure is, said Mr. Grayson. He opened his laptop. Can I read the email too? Israel asked. He hadn't gone outside with the other kids. Why? Bat asked. Because I'm curious. You've been talking about Dr. Jerry Dragoo nonstop. That wasn't true. Was it? Maybe it was true. Okay, said Bat, but no making fun. I wasn't making fun before, Israel said, and I won't now. Here you go, gentlemen, Mr. Grayson said. He clicked on the top message in his inbox. The subject line was, Question about a baby skunk. Then he stood up so that Bat could have his chair. When you're done reading your email, just close the laptop and come join us outside, he said. Then he headed out to the playground. He sat down. He could feel Israel standing behind him, reading over his shoulder. The email read, Dear Bat, I'm very interested in skunks, as you know. I can tell you feel very attached to the kit, and I don't blame you. Baby skunks are adorable, but the question of whether you should keep him as a pet is a complicated one, even if your mom feels reasonably sure that he is disease-free. All pets require a huge commitment of time, energy, and usually money. Skunks are no different. In fact, keeping a skunk as a pet is much more challenging than keeping a dog or cat. Skunks are not pets by nature. They're wild animals. And from my many years of experience, I can tell you that most people don't know what they're getting into. It's very easy to fall in love with the baby skunk, but it's difficult to truly be a good caretaker to a skunk. Most people would be better off with a dog. Still, this skunk kit has come into your life, and for at least the next few weeks, you and your mother must work to be the best caretakers you can be. Should you keep the kit? Should you give him to the rescue people? I don't know the answer because I don't know you, and I don't know your kit. It sounds like, for now, the kit is right where it needs to be, and I trust that you will take good care of it. Sincerely, Dr. Dragoo, Ph.D., Dragoo Institute of the Betterment of Skunks and Skunk Reputations. That's too bad, said Israel. What's too bad? asked Bat. That the skunk guy doesn't think you should keep the kit. That's not what he said Bat. Well, he didn't say that he'd tell your mom to keep him. He didn't say that skunks make good pets. That's true, said Bat, but he didn't say we shouldn't keep Thor either. He said that a good caretaker makes a good pet. He said that a good caretaker makes a good pet. So all I have to do is be the best caretaker in the world and convince my mom to let me keep raising him. I can do that. Bat closed Mr. Grayson's laptop, absolutely determined to become the best caretaker that a skunk had ever had. Can I come over sometime? Israel asked. Why? Said Bat. I don't know, said Israel, to hang out and maybe meet Thor. It's okay with me, Bat answered. I'll have to ask my mom. Chapter 25, House Guests. There were just a few days before Thor was supposed to leave for the animal rescue. Bat didn't have any time to lose, and all afternoon he practiced how he was going to tell Mom about Dr. Jerry Dragoo and how important it was that Thor stay with them as long as possible. But that night at dinner he found himself nervously avoiding the topic. What if he couldn't change Mom's mind? Bat couldn't imagine anything worse than that. So instead of telling her about Dr. Jerry Dragoo, Bat said, Israel wants to come over to our house. Who's Israel? Asked Janie, dipping her chicken chunk into barbecue sauce. He's a kid in my class, Bat said. Bat, honey, that's great, said Mom. Is he your friend? Janie asked. Bat considered the question. Was Israel his friend? Israel was nice to him. He was interested in some of the same things that interest Bat. He didn't seem to think Bat was weird, and he wanted to visit. I don't know, Bat said. Maybe he is. That's kind of a big deal, said Janie. You've never had a friend over before. Yes, I have, Bat said. Ezra comes over all the time. He's my friend, not yours, Janie said. He can be your friend's and Bat, said Mom. I thought you said Ezra is annoying, Janie said. He is annoying, said Bat. But so are you, and you're still my friend. No one is more annoying than you, said Janie, but I guess you're my friend too. Neither of you is annoying, said Mom. And Bat, I think it's great that you have a friend that you want to have a friend over. Well, Bat said, dipping his chicken chunk in ketchup, it was Israel's idea, not mine. He wants to meet Thor. At that moment, Thor was just where he should be, tucked into his pouch, warm against Bat's chest, and remembering Thor made Bat nervous all over again. I think it's a great idea no matter whose it was, said Mom. I'll call Israel's parents to set something up, maybe Saturday? Whenever, Bat said. And then he said, Mom, there's something else too. What is it? Mom had a chicken chunk in her hand ready to dip in the sauce, but she set it down. I wrote to a world skunk expert, Bat said. The words came out fast and loud because they were important. I wrote and asked him about keeping Thor as a pet because I don't want to send him to the rescue people. I want to raise him here at our house. I love Thor. I think maybe he loves me too, and I'm not going to give him away. Oh, Bat, Mom said. How on earth did you find a world skunk expert? And then Bat told her about reading in the animal encyclopedia about Dr. Jerry Dragoo and about Mr. Grayson helping him with the email and about waiting and waiting for a response and about finally getting an email back and about how Israel had wanted to read it too. "I can be a good skunk caretaker, Mom," he said last, and then he wanted to hear what she would say. But it was Janie who spoke. "Wow, Bat," she said. "That's pretty cool that you found an expert and wrote to him. That takes guts. I think you should let him keep raising the skunk, Mom. He's pretty serious." Bat was so surprised that he felt his mouth drop open. Janie was helping him? "Bat," Mom said, "I've been watching you with the kit. You're so responsible and careful with him. But honey, raising Thor until he's old enough to be released is a big commitment. He'd have to stay with us all through the rest of the school year and through the summer as well." That sounded wonderful to Bat. "The longer the better," he said. "You say that now," Mom said, "but what if we get tired of feeding him and cleaning up after him? And what about when he gets bigger and he's awake more of the time?" "Mom," said Bat, and he did his very best to make his voice sound serious, "I will never get tired of Thor. That would be like you getting tired of me and Janie." Mom laughed, and she reached over to squeeze Bat's hand. Then she shook her head, which Bat knew was a sign for no, and he felt his eyes stinging with unspilled tears. But she said, "Beautiful Bat, you have become an excellent skunk caretaker. You have been dedicated, and you even found a way to contact a skunk expert. I have to admit, I am impressed. I'll tell you what, I'm thinking that maybe we won't call the animal rescue next week, and we can try having you take care of Thor, with my help, until he's old enough to be released. How does that sound?" How does that sound? It sounded not as good as a promise that he could keep Thor forever, but still impossibly good. Bat felt like he was vibrating on the inside. He was so happy. He wanted to jump up and whoop with joy. But Thor was curled up and asleep in the sling, and a good skunk caretaker would never startle his kit like that. So instead, he said, "Thank you, Mom, and thank you, Janie. Thank you both." Chapter 26. How to Know Someone. When Saturday came, Bat woke up feeling nervous. What if Israel wanted to hold Thor? Would Bat have to let him? What if Israel didn't like the snacks Bat and Mom had decided on? Lemonade and crackers and apple slices and cheese? Mom had asked Bat what kinds of food Israel liked and what he liked to do for fun, but Bat didn't have any answers. He had never noticed things like that. Most kids like to play handball at recess, he told her. Well, does Israel? Bat didn't know, but Mom said that was okay because they didn't have a handball anyway. Maybe you boys could plant some of the seedlings, she suggested. Mom had little plastic pots of herbs growing in the sunny kitchen window, and now that it was getting warm, it was time to put them in the garden in the back. I don't know if Israel likes to plant things, Bat said. Most kids like to dig in the dirt, Mom said. So when Israel and his dad arrived at 11:30, the first thing that Bat said when he answered the door was, "Do you like to garden?" Israel shrugged. "I guess," he said. "Bat," said Mom behind him, "invite them inside." He was blocking the doorway, Bat realized. He stepped back and said, "Come in." "Thanks," said Israel. His dad said, "Thanks so much for inviting Israel over." "Thanks for bringing him," said Mom. "I'm Valerie." "Tom," said Israel's dad. They shook hands. Then he said, "I'm just going to run a few errands. Can I pick him up around 2 o'clock? After Israel's dad left, Bat said, "We have apples and cheese and crackers and lemonade, and Mom says we can plant the seedlings in the garden, and I guess if you want to come see my room." "Actually," said Israel, "I was hoping to meet the skunk." "Oh," said Bat, "okay." Thor was in his enclosure. He was getting big enough to walk now, but he still wasn't steady on his feet. He seemed to know that when Bat opened the enclosure door, it was something to be excited about because he woke up and started scooting around. "He's tiny," Israel said. Bat scooped up Thor and held him close. Thor could see now, but not very well. Skunks didn't have very good eyesight. "He's way bigger than he was," Bat said, "and he's got fur. When he was first born, he was almost bald and he couldn't open his eyes or walk or anything." "Can I hold him?" Israel asked, putting out his hands. That sounded like a terrible idea to Bat. "Have you ever held a baby skunk before?" "No," said Israel. I don't know, said Bat. You might drop him. I could sit on the floor, Israel said, and you could hand him to me. Bat wanted to say no, but Mom said, Bat, honey, you'd never held a skunk kit either before a few weeks ago, but you've never dropped Thor. I don't know, Bat said again. Would you promise to be careful? Yes, said Israel, I promise. Bat wanted to be sure that Israel was taking this seriously, that he understood how important this was, being careful with Thor. So he looked straight into Israel's eyes. Maybe he could see something in there, like Mom said, something that would let him know it was okay to trust Israel. Israel's eyes were light green. They were framed by thick black eyelashes. Their pupils were round and black, just like everybody's pupils. Bat wanted to see something in Israel's eyes, but all he saw were eyes. Then he looked at Israel's hands, the way they were cupped together to form a safe little nest. He saw how Israel had overlapped his palms so that there was no way Thor could slip between them. Bat didn't know much about eyes, but he knew more about hands. Mom's hands, so strong and sure when handling animals. Lawrence's hands, enormous but gentle anyway. Mr. Grayson's hands with long fingers and interesting rings. Dad's hands with nails clipped short and neat. Janie's hands, so clever at braiding. Israel's hands told Bat that Thor would be safe. So Bat placed the skunk kit into them. He didn't even make Israel sit on the floor. Oh, he's so light, Israel said. He's so cute. He's perfect, Bat said. I'm going to learn everything there is to know about caring for skunks. Mom said, we can keep Thor until he's old enough to release, and I'm going to become the best skunk caretaker in the world. Israel brought Thor up close to his face and rubbed him against his cheek. Do you think maybe you could teach me some stuff too? He asked. You want to learn about the care and feeding of skunks? Bat asked. Yes, said Israel. Maybe they could plant the seedlings the next time Israel came over. Maybe today they could talk about skunks and research skunks and watch YouTube videos about skunks. Okay, said Bat. Israel handed Thor back to Bat, and Bat put on the sling and tucked Thor inside. He felt the skunk scratch and turn and then settle down to sleep. Well, Bat said, do you want to see my room? Sure, said Israel. So Bat led the way through the little house, down the hall, and into his room. He opened the door. After you, he said to Israel. Before he followed Israel into the room, Bat turned to see Mom standing by the skunk enclosure. She was smiling, and she lifted her hand in a little wave. She looked happy, and Bat felt happy, really, really happy. He had a warm, sleepy skunk kit in the pouch around his neck, and he had a boy, maybe even a friend, visiting his room, wanting to research skunks with him. Bat didn't know how things would turn out with Thor, and he didn't know how things would turn out with Israel either. But right now, Bat felt as happy as he'd ever felt in his life. He waved back to his mom and felt his face stretch into a smile just as wide as hers. And then, with Thor tucked safely into his pouch, Bat went into his room to hang out with his friend.